Did they click already? Oh, hi! Well, this is awkward. That's just clickbait. But welcome, my designation is Novak, and I'm here to distract you with a rant about Tears of the Kingdom. By the way, this one has story spoilers, so if you haven't played much, go away. If you know the basics of the game, if you already seen a couple of the cutscenes, if you already done the camera mission, keep watching, don't worry, I'm not gonna talk about the ending or anything. I haven't even played the ending, I've just played a little bit of the main game and seen a little bit of the story, and that's what all this is about. But don't worry, I'm not gonna talk about many of the big things, but if you haven't seen much of it, keep away and come back after you play more of the game. First of all, let me tell you, I love the game. Right now, this is the only thing I look forward to do every day. There's so many good things in it, don't get me wrong, and if you've seen my playthroughs, you'll know how excited I get with everything it has. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Holy shit! This is huge! That's really high. Whoa. Oh. I'm so glad I'm recording. Oh, this is so good. Flying around with dragons. Oh, look at the sun. Oh, whoa, the islands are really huge. And there's another one there. Ah, there. Where do you go, friend? Ah, this is so cool. How beautiful is this game? I love it, but I needed you to click on this video. Don't click away. I still have things to say, because even though it is a very interesting, very engaging game, and has an expansive, incredible world, it needs to improve on some things, and I have these 5 things going around in my head, and I need to share it with someone because they are not letting me enjoy the game properly. So here are the biggest 4 biggest problems of Tears of the Kingdom, and my idea of how to solve them. I'll leave the 5th one till the end, because it's the most important one. The first thing I feel needs a lot of improvement because they haven't implemented well, maybe because we played already Breath of the Wild and affects the way we play, would be the controllers and the submenus. And I know I'm not the first one to say this because there's a bunch of people talking about how they make these mistakes, and to be honest, it's something really hard to improve. There's so many options in this game, and we are already used to playing Breath of the Wild for years, literally since 2017. In Tears of the Kingdom, they changed the button mappings for similar stuff to different positions. That becomes confusing. Things like the runes are now shifted from the D-pad to the left bumper, and I understand it's because of the use of them is more natural through the triggers, but its previous position now has the items, and it's easy to make them up. I have played for close to 80 hours and I'm still making the mistakes over and over again. We have so many options to choose from that it will be better to simplify the commands for them. Another example of this is the bow and the arrows. We have so much use of changing weapons during gameplay, and most times it needs to be quick for it to keep the flow of the battle, but every time we take the bow, it traps us on the bow menu instead of showing the weapons menu. These mistakes start adding up, and most of the playtime is also staring at a submenu, and most often than not, the wrong ones. You don't know how many times I've been trying to just change the rune and then by mistake going to the items rune, or throwing the weapon I'm holding because I'm already used to rotate things with the right bumper. The other problem I have with these menus is the length and size of the items that we can select. You don't know how much time I've also wasted on just looking to the right item on the infinite scroll screen and keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and you never find it because maybe you run out of it. Maybe you don't have it anymore. It would save time if it had a little bit better management for items. We have the option to reorganize in different ways, as most used on by type or power, but sometimes we're gonna use something that we don't use that often, that doesn't have much power, and is not one of the Sonic devices, so none of the reorganizations work for those items. Changing that will be a great improvement to the game and at least would help us cut on time spent on the screen. The second nitpick I have is the amiibos. They cheapened the game by giving the set of armor of previous games. It was the same in Breath of the Wild, but in Breath of the Wild, we didn't have any other way of getting those customs. The problem here is that we can get those in Tears of the Kingdom just by playing. I learned that later on after having used the amiibos because I thought I wouldn't have any other way to get them, but after I got them, someone told me we could just explore and find the set of armors. It feels frustrating to have paid for amiibo, and that thing that I paid extra money for makes the game less interesting, because if I activate them, I don't have to go and explore the world, and I don't feel excited by finding the armor. I said it during my gameplay, this is very interesting because where in Breath of the Wild we didn't have any other way to get them, here is part of the lore. We can imagine them as important pieces of clothing valued in game, they belong to previous incarnations of Link and they were burrowing around or hidden in the overworld, in the islands, or the spoiler part of the game that I don't want to talk much about in case you haven't done the mission of the camera. But here they are part of the game, they are part of the lore, they are part of the canon. So finding them will be such an amazing experience just by having a reward that's interesting and unique for exploring. Don't get me wrong, amiibos also get some of the skins for the paraglider that are not in the game, and that's interesting. That is a good use of the amiibo because there's no other way to get them. Now, the third thing that has been bothering me a lot is the ability of using previous save in the game, or more precisely, not being able to. Well, first of all, I'm one of the 5 people that play Breath of the Wild on the Wii U. So why don't let us transfer our files from the Wii U to the Switch and let us use those files? It's like they're slapping us loyal Nintendo fans in the face, saying like, oh, you bought this console that didn't do well? Well, too bad, you have to play the entire game that takes 400 hours or more in this new system if you want to have the little special reward for having played both games in the same system. That's something that really bothers me, and the biggest problem I have with it is that I know it's possible to transfer, because I've searched for ways to do it. I haven't been able to do it because I haven't cracked my Switch, I haven't done anything that might make Nintendo mad at me for doing, but I know it's possible to have your Wii U homebrew and transfer it to your computer, and I've seen the entire process of doing it. There's a program that lets you even change the file format from the Wii U to the Switch file, and if you have your Switch modified, you can put it back in and have your save file from your Wii U in your Switch. And I'm asking Nintendo, why don't you let us do this legally, like the right way? Why don't let us have these options from you? You don't like piracy, you don't like when we play around with our consoles, even when we own them. Why don't you give us the options? Why we pay so much for the NSO when we don't get those options? To transfer save files from older consoles to the new ones. That will be something to pay the NSO for. That will be a good plus for people that bought the Wii U or the 3DS. Same goes for other games like Hyrule Warriors, but the inability of transferring your data isn't the only problem. The problem is also that they can give you more stuff, and they don't. I have a lot of rubies and sapphires and ores of every kind on Breath of the Wild. I have a lot of resources I've got, and they don't let us have those, just as a little reward for having played the previous game. Apart from that, it would be also nice if we don't have to reread all the basic stuff from Breath of the Wild. Like the first time we find a Korok, both in Breath of the Wild and in Tears of the Kingdom, we have the little conversation of, oh, you can see me, not many people can see us, or when we meet Hetsu, he has an initial explanation. We already played Breath of the Wild, we know what you are, we know everything. It's frustrating that it makes us farm for stuff again, it makes us read stuff again. And there's a possibility of implementing all these things because we have the transfer of the horses. It is possible to go back to the stables and find the horses from Breath of the Wild. This is just frustrating to see that Nintendo doesn't want us to do simple stuff that they can do. The fourth thing is the story, and Nintendo doesn't seem to understand that the story of their games is what keeps us engaged with them. There wouldn't be so much content about Zelda through the internet if it wasn't for the story. We started being fans as a community because of the theories, because of wanting to know what came before, what game came after, what was the start of Hyrule, what happened with the 3 goddesses during Ocarina of Time, what was the start of the Triforce. If it wasn't for the story, we wouldn't be such big fans, and there's a bunch of people devoted to it. Just look at Bandit or Celtic or Monster Maze, those are channels devoted just to see the little details in the game and connecting them. That's what keeps us engaged, just going back and seeing things that are not just referenced but also connected properly through the lore and through the canon, that keep a cohesive story that brings interest, because if you're not connected with the characters, there's nothing to engage with. If you make a connection with a character, that's what keeps us coming back. I know many people are playing because they got attached to the characters from Breath of the Wild. I know there's many people that have a special attachment for a specific link, from Twilight Princess, from Wind Waker, from Ocarina of Time. There's a specific link that you like the most because of a specific reason. So knowing the story of them makes it special in a different level, that is just like another game in the same franchise. I think everyone knows that the spirit of the wolf that we follow on Twilight Princess is the same spirit as the Hero of Time. That connection is exciting because it keeps us with the story that we've been following. It keeps us thinking about what was the continuation of this character that we played as, that we got invested in, that we care about. But here in Tears of the Kingdom, I haven't finished the game fully, but on the cutscenes I've seen, on the story I've read, on the things that they teach you through the game, it feels like they are very detached from what the rest of the games are. And that started from Breath of the Wild. Because if we remember then, they talked about the child timeline, the adult timeline, the fallen timeline, all at the same time, which made no sense, and now they're talking about the first king of Hyrule, that also doesn't make sense because we saw that there were Hylians in the sky, or well, on Skyloft during Skyward Sword, and then we're talking about Ocarina of Time and Spirit Tracks, and like all these versions of Hyrule that were before, and this game just throws them away just by talking about people being weirded out by reading Zelda's name in all the text. Knowing that Zelda came from the first reincarnation of Hylia. Those little things that don't make sense are frustrating to people invested in the story. I don't know if this is a soft reboot or what they're doing, but they need to fix this. It's a big mistake to have the story so disconnected. I thought they had solved that. I thought they had started to care about it after Skyward Sword, when they released the Hyrule Historia book and started taking more care about the chronology. So not having them care about what came before feels like they are not caring about their own game. They care about the gameplay, they care about us as players interacting with the game and exploring the world, but they don't care about how the players are going to invest in the franchise as a whole, you know? So that is my biggest problem with the game at the moment. Again, I haven't finished it, so this will change if I learn more and it starts making a little bit more sense, but at the moment, with what I know and what I've seen, I feel they should care a little bit more about having the connections with the story overall. So now that I presented my main problems, I'm not going to stay here and just rant about it and not tell you how it could have been improved on. I care about this game and I want to show what it could have been if it had been 100% a perfect game, because Tears of the Kingdom, it's an amazing game I've been playing for hours and hours and I don't get tired of it. Like, I know I'm ranting about little things and problems I have, but the game overall is incredible. It will still keep me for hours beyond what I have already played, and I don't want these little things to lessen the experience. So the first problem we had was the controllers and the menus. I know it's possible with the switch to remap buttons for games, but I feel it would be a better option to have in-game control schemes that make them more intuitive to use. Maybe changing the buttons to some more unique positions would help differentiate a little bit more of the stuff. Maybe changing the runes to the D-pad, knowing that the runes have a selection wheel and that relates more naturally with directions. Maybe changing the selection screens to the L button. Also giving the option to use gyro to rotate pieces. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but having more options is never bad, and that way we don't throw our weapons by mistake, because we could just avoid using the right bumper for two different actions if we wanted to. Another improvement would have to be holding the ZR button to change the bows, so that way we can have melee weapons ready as soon as we finish using the bow, instead of having to run to put away the bow before selecting another melee weapon. And for the submenus, would be good to have different tiers, so instead of having a button to reorganize the same long menu that may bury some stuff at the end of it no matter in which reordering you have it, they could implement instead a different selection of submenus. So let's say just a menu for consumable items, like food, or a menu for monster parts, a menu for ores, a menu for zonai devices, and that way we can just quickly shift from one to another, knowing that if we need a ruby, we just go to the ores menu. If we need apples, well, we go to the food menu. If we need plants, I go to the items with special abilities. So that will be a way to really improve the gameplay and make us lose less time just scrolling around, moving from thing to thing to see if we still have the item that we're looking for. My second problem was the amiibos, and I don't know if this comes as a mini spoiler for some starting islands, but we've seen that if we beat some of the mini bosses in the islands, we get some treasure maps. So maybe use the amiibos in a similar way where you don't give away the armor by scanning the amiibo, because we can get it in game. So why not give a second quest for people that have amiibos? Instead of giving away the armor itself, you could get a map to the boss you need to fight to get the location of the armor. That way you get more exploration and get a way of fighting the bosses knowing what armor set is related to. It will give a plus for having the amiibo, which will be knowing where to go to find the specific armor set that you're looking for, but doesn't lessen the impact of getting the armor straight away. That way it gives you a push to keep exploring Hyrule. The third problem I presented was the savings, and the first thing to fix is to allow transfers from the Wii U. It is possible to have stuff from Breath of the Wild into Tears of the Kingdom, and we know that because of the horses. And I know the idea of starting the game is to not have much, and that's why we lose all the hearts and stamina when the upheaval happens, but later on we could go to a stable, or even to our house from Breath of the Wild. Actually, can we do that? Wait, I'm talking out of place right now, because I haven't gone to that part of the game yet. I'm gonna keep it for the video, but actually I don't know if it's possible. Maybe it's possible? That I just haven't found it yet? Well, the idea would be to go to your house from Breath of the Wild, and if we have saves from Breath of the Wild in the game, we could have our stuff back from Breath of the Wild, or just go into a stable, or like another specific location that gives you back the stuff that you have in the previous game. That would be an amazing way to reward the previous players from previous games, or even transferring stuff with amiibos, like the information stored in them from Super Smash. Just load the amiibos on the Wii U or on, well, while having loaded your save file from Breath of the Wild, and then reading it on Tears of the Kingdom. And beyond that, if the game can read previous save files, also, I don't think it will be very difficult to have a little extra code saying, like, if you have these savings of Breath of the Wild, don't run the first time dialogue of what we already know from previous games. Like the little tutorials we already have. We already knew how to shield surf, we already knew how to find Koroks, we already knew what to do with those things, so it will be a little bit of a time saver if they implemented a code to avoid the whole "you can see me" conversation from the Koroks, or, well, similar dialogues of previous characters. As for the fourth one, with the story, well, this story is engaging. I just want them to connect it properly to the rest of the chronology of the lore we have. And maybe this starts to be a little bit on fanfiction territory, but I feel that the most important game for them after Breath of the Wild would have been Hyrule Warriors. What do I mean by this? In Breath of the Wild, they spoke about all the timelines and all the versions of Link that were before. They talk about Twilight Princess, they reference the Great Sea with the salt, they reference the Fallen Hero timeline. The map itself, it's a mix match of previous games. We have Sora's and Rito's coexisting. And that's the thing in Tears of the Kingdom. We have Sora's in the first version of Hyrule, we have Rito on the first version of Hyrule, where they tell us, like, this is the first king of Hyrule and these are the first sages, but through Hyrule's Storia, we learned that the Rito and the Sora are an evolution of each other, depending on the timeline. So either that's wrong and they need to rework it, or this is a story that takes part as, like, when they're talking about the first king of Hyrule, it would be the first king of Hyrule after the reconciliation of all timelines. And that connection of all those timelines can happen if something like Hyrule Warriors is canon. Let's say a world where maybe not Sia, maybe not the same story, but something similar where everything merges back, but there's repercussions, and where in the end of the game, Hyrule ends up being a mixed match of these previous worlds, and the Rito and the Sora coexist. Having a game, or at least a story, or an acknowledgement that this happened, that this reunion of all these timelines happened in the lore, would help with the story. Maybe a clarification of how do we have the first king of Hyrule being a Sonai if we saw that Zelda existed in the sky, back in Skyward Sword. A clarification of why people are weirded out of hearing Zelda's name in ancient texts, knowing that Hylia incarnated into Zelda back again in Skyward Sword, that Hyrule was created after Skyloft was lowered from the sky, and there were no Sonais back then. So maybe it's in the game, maybe I haven't seen it yet, but maybe something that tells us, like, this story that we're hearing about is not the first king of Hyrule, but the first king of Hyrule after all this happens, after the recreation of Hyrule, after the Rito and the Sora coexisted. And maybe all this is happening through the story that was shown in the tapestry on Breath of the Wild 10,000 years ago, but we know for a fact that all the games that happened before, from Twilight Princess, from Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, Wind Waker, all of them happened millions and millions of years before. Because if the calamity 10,000 years ago happened after Ganondorf existed, that happened after Ocarina of Time. And if it happened after Rito and Sora coexisted, it happened after the timelines connected again. So it should have a clarification of where exactly it has. Like, it's just a little thing for us fans that keep caring about the stories, to keep coming back and feel like Nintendo does care as well. What it tells us when they just recreate the stories and make them feel detached from each other, it's just like, well, it's just another game. We will keep coming back because it's Zelda, and Zelda is an amazing game, an amazing franchise. But at the same time, it feels like it's not receiving the love from the developers that it has from the fans. That is a big problem, because when we care and they don't care, it just feels like a detachment from the franchise. My solution here is just Nintendo, maybe in a DLC, maybe somewhere, acknowledge that these other things happened before, and acknowledge that they are connected, that we didn't lose our investment in the previous games. And for my final nitpick, the fifth one is Cass. He needs to come back. I really liked him. I really enjoyed every single of his side quests. I loved his music. I loved his accordion. I know many people do. And Nintendo seemed to take our favorite character and throw it to the trash. I bet he was like the second most loved character, well, side character after Sidon. And Nintendo just threw him away. What are you thinking, Nintendo? We need him back. We need some of his quests. We need his music. His song was like one of the most highly rated songs from Breath of the Wild, and I haven't heard anything similar to it here in Tears of the Kingdom. The closest things we have is the pelican thing that works at the Gazette, and it feels a little bit like an annoying character. I don't really like seeing him around. I really miss Cass. I really miss Cass, and I know I'm not the only one. So, Nintendo, here's an idea for a DLC. I know there's many people talking about DLCs reconstructing Hyrule, but no. Or, well, we can attach it to it. Like, why not implement it in Reconstructing Hyrule? But have Cass come back on a DLC. I want more of his quests. If I see Cass in a DLC, I'm gonna buy it immediately. Nintendo, make this happen. Make Cass come back. Now, if you excuse me, I need to go back and look for him. I want to keep hope that he's still somewhere around the game. I'm gonna keep playing. And you, well, I see you. If you let me distract you with my next video. N.O.V.A.C. signing off.